churning.
Here we go. We are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to VJug. I was about to say VJug 24, but we're not quite there yet. Welcome to the Virtual Jug, and this is a special session today. Joining me and Monsieur Oleg Shalayev is sorry, Oleg, I really bastardized your name. Oleg Shalayev is Mr. Josh Long and Mr. Matt Raible. How are you guys?
Excellent. Are we muted?
No, you're good. We can hear you.
Hi.
So yeah, welcome to the Virtual Jug. Now, Josh, I think this is your third session, maybe fourth if you include VJug 24.
Yeah, that sounds about the size of it.
And Matt, I believe this is second.
That's correct.
This is second. Awesome. Well, it's amazing having you guys individually present, but to have you both is an absolute honor and something we'll cherish for many years to come. I'm gonna say again.
Cherish is certainly one word. But I can think of others.
And today you're going to be building robust APIs and apps with Spring Boot and Angular. So that's a lot of buzzwords. I like.
Yeah.
I'm going to share my screen quick. See if this is going to work. Oleg, I'm going to share. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. I'm going to share this one. Share, and then hit this. Whoa! Can you see that?
That's awesome.
Awesome. So yeah, this is the topic: building robust APIs and apps with Spring Boot and Angular. And our speakers today: Matt Raible at Raible and Josh Long at Starbucks Man. And not so long ago, where were we, Josh? Was that Barcelona?
Crete, my friend.
Was it Crete? Was it Crete? We were in Crete, and we were in a Starbucks, and I was having a Starbucks with Starbucks Man in a Starbucks. It was
yeah.
special.
And I was drinking water.
You were drinking water. You were so close to fulfilling a dream, but that's fine.
Green tea.
So the Virtual Jug is sponsored by Zero Turnaround. So please check out what they have on zeroturnaround.com for some free trials. Xrebel and JWTs there available to try out with your Java applications. As part of this Virtual Jug, you can interact with the speakers and each other on IRC. You can go to Freenode, and the channel is #VirtualJug. Or if you're on the Virtual Jug site, you can just go to the widget to the right of the video, and that will log you in automatically to IRC. Feel free to share the group in session, and please do send feedback about the Virtual Jug or this session directly to either me or the Virtual Jug handle. The other thing I will say is that at the bottom of the video that you're looking at, embedded in the Virtual Jug, or if you're going directly to YouTube, there'll be a little settings cog. Click on that and make sure you're viewing at the highest resolution you possibly can. That will allow you to get the best viewing experience. So do ask your questions and have discussion in IRC, and we'll ask Josh and Matt either during, depending on the question, or at the end of the session. Oleg today is going to be looking after clicking around. He's actually running the session today. So I'll unfortunately have to shoot off at around the hour. This session should hopefully go on for around 90 minutes, but I will be back for the end, maybe with a screaming child, so that's something to look forward to as well. And that's by no means any reflection of the session. It's just a screaming child screaming. Say again?
What if the speakers are screaming?
Yeah, it would be. That's exactly what it is. Okay, anything to add, Oleg?
Yeah, everything is great. I'm honored to be the host of this session, and it's all up to you now. Matt and Josh, welcome. You have the stage.
Okay, right on.
Giddy up.
Giddy up. Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for having us. Hi, Matt. Hi. So we're, can you see my screen? Is that what's happening here? Yeah, good, okay. So, Matt, I'm Josh. Who are you, Matt?
So I'm Matt Raible. I grew up in the backwoods of Montana, picked from the sticks. I didn't even have electricity or running water for 16 years, and I had to walk 2 miles to the bus stop every day, and it was uphill both ways. So that was kind of an interesting, introduction to the world. But at the same time, that's all I knew. I was born into it, so not so bad. I'm a Java champion, web developer, and I also work for Okta as a developer advocate. And Okta basically does APIs and user management in the cloud. Cool company, fun to work for, and we got these cool T-shirts, right? Diversity, baby.
Yeah. Right on. And I'm Josh Long. I'm a Spring developer advocate, open source contributor and engineer. I have the dubious distinction of being the #1 most visible, most prolific, most highly lauded contributor of of bugs, but still number one contributor of bugs to projects like Spring Boot, Spring Cloud, Spring Integration, Spring Batch, Bodden, Time Leaf Activity, etc. More bugs per commit than any other developer on the Spring team. I've been, as part of what I do, I'm a Java champion. I wrote books and do training videos and so on. And I just finished my 5th book called Cloud Native Java. And that book is all about how to build applications that survive and thrive in the cloud in terms of Spring Boot, Spring Cloud, and Cloud Foundry. And for those of you wondering, and were you here, I imagine that we could see and confirm that you are curious as to what bird that is. And most people are curious about the animals on the O'Reilly covers. Anybody who knows anything about the O'Reilly books knows that nobody cares what's in the middle of the book. It's all about the covers. Isn't that true?
That's true.
It's true. I don't even know what's inside those books. I just bought them because they have great animals. So the cover here, the bird on the cover is a blue-eared kingfisher. A blue-eared kingfisher that is indigenous to the Indonesian Java Island, or as we'd say in English, native to the Java Islands. So it's a bird that is indigenous to Java. It's native to Java. And birds, they fly, often through the clouds. So it's a bird that is native to Java that flies through the clouds. It's a cloud native Java bird. It's okay, man. It'll come. Just give it time. Give it time. Give it time. It'll come. So there's that. And, you know, both Matt and I have one thing in common. We care about building production-worthy applications. Is that fair?
Right. It's one of those things that, you know, for the early parts of our career, we certainly built applications that worked, but we were always building for the happy path, right? We're always building for things to just, you know, we test the positive scenarios, not the negative scenarios. Right. And what we've learned through our career is if you want to build really robust and resilient systems, you need to plan for failure. You need to build for failure. So you need to be able to, you know, not die when the server goes down and not throw 500 errors and, you know, still return some data and only part of your actual system goes down, not the whole thing. Right,
exactly. And in both of our careers, we've looked at different sides of that, right? It seems like you can't escape the need for that. Anybody can build a REST API on a sunny day, you know, build a simple web app on a sunny day, but making that thing work beyond those sunny days, that's really hard, you know? And so what better stage, I think, what better forum for that discussion than here in foggy San Francisco, California.
It's not a sunny day.
Not a sunny day at all today. Right?
It's cold out and everything.
Cold, yeah. Rainy. It's like 10 in the morning, 9 in the morning here. You know, it's gray in the summer. So yeah, so we have we've both seen that focus. We've both understood that that's a very important concern, and so we thought we'd talk about it today. I think you and I were sat at a discussion. You know how we weren't. I think we were at some meeting or another, and some sort of conference talk. And after the conference, they typically take people. You know, you go to the bar, right? That's a sort of natural thing. And so I think we had a discussion about what we should do a talk about this. And I think we were inspired by our beverages of choice.
We said, what should we build?
And what should we build? And I know you looked at your hand.
Right, and I said, this is good. We should build a beer service.
Something to talk about in terms of beer, right?
Right, and you know, beer can be something that you're building for failure.
Right.
Right, because you know, if you have too many,
you fail. Yeah.
You fail.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good.
No.
The next day. That maybe that night, but at the same time, we don't want to give people too many choices. Now we have a big problem in the U.S. where we have all these craft beers, and there's so many beers to choose from, and you don't know which one. So we wanted to build a beer service that basically filters out the beers that aren't so great.
Right. And we can use that as a basis for our demo application today, right?
And why? Because beer is the cause
and the solution to
all of life's problems.
Yes. So we're going to build an application today. I'll go first, and then Matt will take us home. We're going to build an application today first in terms of Spring Boot and Spring Cloud. So let's see here. Here we are. We're going to go to start.spring.io. Anybody who knows me knows that I love start.spring.io, the Spring initializer. Start.spring.io is my second favorite place on the web, of course, after production. I love production. You should love production. Bring your friends, bring your family, bring the loved ones. It's the happiest place on earth. Production is better than Disneyland. But if you're not already in production, then you can begin your journey here at start.spring.io. And so what we're going to do is we're going to build a new application. I think today for our first module, since we're going to go through a few of them, we should build a Gradle project, use Groovy, and we're going to build a beer catalog service, right? It's a service that keeps a repository of beer available. So we're going to use Spring support for building web applications. That seems a reasonable thing to do. We'll use the actuator for observability. We're going to use Eureka for service registration and discovery to do client-side load balancing and scale out and so on. We're going to use H2. Now, H2 is an in-memory embedded SQL database. And because it's in memory and it's embedded, it's going to lose all of its state, all of the data that it contains in therein. Every single time we reinitialize the application, every single time we restart the process, all of its data is going to just disappear. So in this way, it's very similar to MongoDB. It just loses the data all the time for no reason at all. Just randomly loses your data all the time. So then we're going to use JPA, the Java Persistence API, because I make poor life decisions. So JPA. Now we have here everything that we need. We have, I think, all the things we're going to need for our initial service. Can you think of anything else? Nope. Does that seem reasonable? Okay, very good. Now, naturally, if we did want to, elect to add anything else, we could switch to the full version, of course, and we're given a veritable ocean of checkboxes, things that we could elect to add to our service here. But for our purposes here today, right now, I think we're in a good place, so we can leave these selections as they are. All right, let's get going. So we'll hit generate, and that's going to give us a zip file, which I'll open up here. Downloads, beer catalog service. Copy that here, unzip beer catalog service. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my IDE, and it doesn't really matter what IDE you're using. Anything is fine. We happen to be using IntelliJ, but for what we're doing today, if you've got good Java or modern language support and Gradle or Maven support, then you should be just fine. So we'll open this up. Here we are. Yes, sir.
Did you know that at any given time, 0.7% of the world is drunk?
I had no idea.
So 50 million people right now are drunk.
Right now?
Right now.
You think they're all watching?
I hope not.
Oh, dear.
But it is happy hour in some
part of the world, yeah.
Some parts of the world. Right?
Where Simon and Oleg are.
Right.
All right. So cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Okay, so we've got a new service. We've just opened this up in the IDE. Okay. And this is just a simple little catalog. We're just going to have a catalog that lists well, just that beers, right? So we need to model the beer itself. So create an entity here called a beer, and we'll make it a JPA entity. So at entity, very good. It's going to have an ID and a surrogate auto-incrementing value here. So I'm going to say long ID, and then we'll have a string name for the beer. Very good. Now I need some getters and setters, and I want to, a nice easy way to, initialize instances of this entity. So I'll use the canonical annotation, the AST transformation from Groovy, the language itself, and that'll give me the ability to now work with this as a Java bean, basically. And in order to be able to save instances of this record in the database, I need to have a repository. And again, this is just an object, a design pattern from Eric Evans's amazing domain-driven design. It's an object that's meant to handle the tedious sort of data manipulation and data management lifecycle of an entity. So, create, read, update, delete, all that kind of boring, soul-annihilatingly tedious stuff that nobody wants to do. So we're going to let Spring Data do that work for us. We're going to extend the JPA repository. And with that, we can now create a simple API, right? So we're going to create a beer REST controller, okay? And this will just be a REST controller. And it's going to have an endpoint here that's going to use, we'll use the beer repository, and we'll create an endpoint. We're going to say at get mapping beer, and we'll say def beer return repository dot find all. Okay. Now, of course, this isn't going to return any records at the moment, is it? We need some data. So I'm going to create a bean of type either command line runner or application runner. Choice is yours. I'll use application runner because I'm trying to remember to do so more often. So init, and we'll inject the beer repository here. So I'm telling Spring, I've got a bean of type application runner that I want to create. Application runner is itself just an interface. It's a functional interface even because it has one method. So we can return an instance of it like so, args, and all we're going to do is create some data, and we're going to use some sample beers. So cat desktop beers.txt clipboard. Okay, we'll paste this list of beers into our application, right? Using a nice little list here, and then we're going to visit every single one of them in a for each loop, and we're just going to save each one to the database, right? So repository.save new beer it, right? that look right?
Looks good.
Oh, we need the name. We need the. There you go.
All
That's what that handy dandy canonical annotation in Groovy lets me use name parameters here for the constructor corresponding to the Java Bean properties. Okay, very good. So there's that. And just to be sure, I think that's enough. Well, actually, let's just confirm it's working by visiting every single record that comes back and just printing it out. Okay, what do you say? Now let's run this. There we are. Let's see what we get. Localhost 8080/beer. There's our simple API. It's just a few records from all around the world. We've got types of beer from Asia, from South America, from Africa, from Europe, from the United States, and North America.
Yeah.
Seems like we've got a pretty good selection. I don't know if there's any beer in Antarctica.
They don't even have stores.
Any breweries?
No.
You don't think the penguins drink?
Well, I mean, people might have brought it.
Right.
But yeah, you can't buy it, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Anyway, so point is we don't have anything from there that we know of, but if you think of something, do let us know. Very good. So we have now a simple beer service. This service is available, but it's, there's only one instance of it. And if I wanted to talk to it, naturally I could build a client that, a service that if one service wanted to talk to this, I could certainly point that service to this thing's IP address, and that would certainly be one option. But what happens, of course, if that service instance should go down? If that goes down, then that IP address is going to be null and void, right? It's not going to be valid anymore. So that's one kind of problem. Another is that we want to make it so that we can control routing. When we talk to this thing, we want to be able to figure out which route to use to find this service. And that routing is often controlled by a load balancer. Well, load balancers are certainly very powerful, but we want to be able to control the kinds of load balancing. Maybe we want to do data center aware load balancing, we want to do rack aware load balancing, or multi-tenancy, or data sharding, or data locality, or maybe you want to pin a record to a particular service given an OAuth token, or whatever. So you want to be able to control the load balancing strategy. And by default, what we're doing here is just sort of, if you're using a load balancer, a proper piece of infrastructure, you're going to get round robin, or maybe LRU, that kind of thing, or you might get some definition of sticky sessions based on session affinity for a well specified, very, very specific type of session. But that doesn't nearly begin to address the sort of use cases I may have. So I want to be able to control routing. I want to be able to find this thing, and I want to be able to sort of avoid DNS if I can. DNS is a useful thing for open web discussions and communications, but for service-to-service calls, it's fairly fragile, right? First of all, it's not a very sophisticated protocol. So if you ask DNS, where does this service live, it can tell you that, but it can't tell you if that service is alive, right? It can't tell you if you knock on the door whether anybody will respond. It just tells you the address. So we need to sort of be immune to that particular property. We need to make sure that if we have a topology, that we can interrogate the state of that topology and figure out whether that service is there or not before we make calls. So for these reasons and more, we need to introduce a little bit of indirection, and DNS doesn't quite get us there, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to use a service registry. And here we have a number of different options. Spring Cloud works very well thanks to its discovery client abstraction with any number of different service registries. But I'm going to use the Eureka service here. Now, you can use Apache Zookeeper, etcd, Console, HashiCorp rather. You can use Netflix Eureka. You can use Cloud Foundry. All these are viable service registries, and they're all supported through an abstraction called the discovery client. I'm going to use Eureka for a number of reasons. First of all, it's very simple to set up, and second of all, I am quite confident in its abilities, given that Netflix has used it for almost a decade at scale. So we're going to build a Eureka server, and this one I think we'll just use Maven and Java, right? We'll create a Java project. Kind of boring, but this is a I'll bet you
that's stable, right?
Yeah, stable and so on. And I'll bet you that this is actually going to be the most concise of all the projects I built today. You'll see. The bit of code that I have to write to make this work will be less than all the other ones. You want to bet?
Nope.
No? Okay. Unzip Eureka service, cd Eureka service, IDEA POM XML. Take some green tea.
Hey Josh, did you know that the people of Nigeria drink more Guinness than the people of Ireland?
I had no idea.
You wouldn't think that, right?
No,
maybe they have more people.
Maybe they have more people. Yeah. Either way, it kind of makes me want to go to Nigeria. All right. Here we go. Can you see that font? Yeah, it seems okay. Good. So now we've got a new project. It's going to be a Eureka server, and we know it's going to be a Eureka server because it says @enable Eureka server. Now, that's the sum total of the changes I need to make to this application for it to work. The only thing I didn't need to do now, in non-Java code, is to specify a bit of configuration. I'm going to specify that I want the registry, the Eureka registry, to start on port 8761. I'm going to say that I want Eureka to not fetch the registry because it is a registry, and I'm going to say that I want to have the Eureka client not register with itself because, again, why, right? So let's go ahead and start this application up, and we'll see it spin up on port 8761. Oops, that's not even close to right. 8761. Very cool. So there's our service registry.
Looks good.
Beautiful, mouse over for the logo there on the top.
Yeah.
That is nice.
That is nice.
But there are no services here, right? We need to register our service, the one we just spun up, and make it talk to this thing to make itself available, to advertise its presence so that other clients can consume it from there. So let's do that. Let's go back to our reservation service, our beer catalog service, and we'll do a few things. We have to rely upon the fact that we have Eureka on the class path here, right? So if you see it says Spring Cloud Starter Eureka, that's our dependency, and then we go to the beer catalog service application, and we activate the discovery client. So @enable discovery client, all right? And we just restart. So that's it. That's going to opt in. Oh, it's not going to work. We also need to do one more thing. We need to give it a name. So Spring application name equals beer catalog service.
Well, it works. It just shows up with a funky name.
Right, yeah. It's not. We can do better.
Like untitled.
Yeah. Or unknown or something. Yeah, it's a default white label name. Okay. All right, let's see. Everything should be better. There we are. Now we've got one service registered in the registry, available for others to consume, a client, some sort of other service to consume. And that's what we're going to do. Since you and I both we know that we're sort of steering towards building an actual web client, what we need to do is to make it easy for that client to talk to our services. This is a pretty trivial service, and if this were the only service, then the client could perhaps talk to this directly. But you and I both know that that's not how microservices work, right? You need it's a system, not just one.
Right.
So we need to make sure that client-specific concerns, are centralized, so we don't have
like
to.
an API gateway or something.
Right. Yeah. Some sort of intermediary, right? And you and I are building an HTML5 application.
Right.
So the last thing that we want to do is to have to change every single sort of backend service to accommodate the introduction of that HTML5 client
Right.
into
We
the
don't
system.
want to be like cross-origin star.
Right, for everything,
Allow
yeah.
everyone.
So let's centralize. Let's proxy our services, right? Let's build an edge service. Maybe build a client specific view of the data, right? So we're going to do that. We're going to go back to start.spring.io, and we're going to build a Kotlin project, and we're going to call this the edge service. Imaginatively enough, right? So edge service, and the web service is going to use Spring support for building web apps. We'll use Eureka support. We'll use the actuator, of course, for observability. We're going to use Fane for declarative REST clients. We're going to use the Histrix circuit breaker, and we're going to use the Zool micro proxy. Does that seem like enough to you?
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. All right, let's hit go. Got a new project now, and we'll go back here, copy from downloads, edge service. Here we are, unzip, edge service, cd edge service. And we'll open this up. We'll open up this project in our IDE.
Hey, Josh.
Yeah.
Did you know you can swim in pools of beer in Austria?
Oh, why have I never been to Austria?
I don't think we need a
It's our
JVM conference.
Yeah. Simon, get on this, man. So here we go. Here's our edge service application. And let's see, this is going to be a client, and the client, as we said, one thing that we could do to solve having to constantly add access control origin headers to every single one of our services is just to proxy data back and forth. So we can do that easy enough with the Zool micro proxy. So @enable Zool proxy.
It's got a great name, right?
Yeah, it's fairly straightforward. If you don't know what that means, then you're missing something. And Zool, of course, just for those who are who haven't had the chance to watch the Ghostbusters movie, the first one refers to the guardian of the underworld, the portal, the gatekeeper, the proxy, if you will, the gateway to the underworld. That's Zool right there. Okay, so we're going to build a Zool proxy, and we're going to have this thing participate in service registration discovery. So @enable discovery client, and this service also needs to have a name. So we'll say edge-service, and we can spin this up. That'll give us an
I
edge.
want to give it a different port too, right?
Oh, fair point. Yes, that's going to fail spectacularly. Server.port 8081. Okay, haha, gotcha. Restarting. Very nice. And while we're there, since IntelliJ doesn't understand that this is a Spring Boot app, I'm going to be restarting the same thing in the same port. There we go. Okay. So we've got now our Edge service is registered in the registry. The registry is now, advertising the presence of these two services, right? So I know that if I have this Zool microproxy, I can take this service ID and use that as a context path, right? So 8081/beers, right? Beer. How did I fail that? That is so awkward. Let's see. Beer catalog service. Beer. Should be beers, you're right. But that doesn't solve a real problem. 404. Beer catalog. There. Lowercase. Who knew? Okay, so next time it's going to have to be beers. So let's go back and restart that catalog service. Okay, that'll be fine. So that's certainly one option. We can just proxy the data back and forth. But as you said before, this isn't really what a self-respecting client would want, right? We want a list of the good beers, not just all the beers.
Right.
Right. Not the cream of the.
We don't want PBR.
Yeah. No, not PBR. Some do. It's fine, but let's get rid of
If
it.
you're on the river, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay.
San Francisco.
Okay. So we drink PBR here.
Do you?
There's people.
Hipsters.
Hipsters. Yeah, you're a hipster. Jay hipster.
I am.
There you go.
I'm a hipster.
So okay, we are going to now write a client-specific edge-specific API, and a view, if you will, of the data, an edge service. So we're going to build a beer API adapter REST controller, and our REST controller will talk to our downstream service, our actual beer catalog service. So we're going to create we're going to inject the REST template. That's certainly one option. We can use the Spring Framework REST template here. The REST template is an HTTP client. It's a workhorse HTTP client that you can use in the Spring Framework. And it's fairly simple to define a REST template, right? But the problem is that our REST template is not out of the box aware of all of the stuff that we're doing in our code here to route requests based on a service ID to the particular service instance. If you think about it, this Zool microproxy is making a request, and it's using the service ID, and yeah, in this case, since we've only got one instance of that service, it's calling that one instance. But if we had more than one, it would have to do load balancing, right? And that load balancing is done on the client in the code, in the proxy itself, thanks to a component called Ribbon, Netflix Ribbon. So that logic is centralized. If you want to route requests to other services, you can use the same mechanism, but we have to teach our REST template to be smart enough to do that, right? We have to make it aware of the service registry, Eureka in this case. We have to make it aware of the load balancing mechanism by saying @load balanced. And if we do that, when we inject this, the single instance, we can now have an endpoint here called good beers, fun, good beers.
I like that Kotlin. It's fun.
Yeah, me too. It is fun. So we're going to return a collection of beer, right? We're going to get the data back from the service, and it's going to be turned back into a collection of beer objects. So we need a wrapper, a DTO, to describe that. So let's create one here. And what we're doing is we're creating a DTO kind of object, and it's going to have a name field and an ID field to match what we've got in the actual service. And we're making the fields nullable. That's what these question marks are. And we're providing default values. That's what these equals are. So this syntax here creates a full Java bean.
That's awesome.
Getters, headers, everything else, all that stuff is there. Okay, so now what we need to do is to call the service and get the response and send it back to the client. And we could do that thanks to our work that we just did there. We could certainly say, HTTP : beer catalog -service. We could certainly do that. and then just fill out the rest of the parameter list. But this is a little tedious. If I had to do this for all the code that I wrote that was HTTP centric, I'd very quickly end up in a situation where we're just writing clients all day, right? And that takes a lot of the fun out of solving problems, is writing client code, right? So instead, let's move up the abstraction stack a little bit. Let's make our lives a little easier. Instead of using the REST template, which is fine, if you want to use it, it's fine. You can do that, and you'll certainly have more control. But I want to build a client for my, I want to build a client for my service, an actual service client for my service, and I don't want to have to reproduce that work. I also want to make sure that the client that does get built doesn't have too much magic in it, right? I don't want it to be hard coded or coupled to the sort of definition of the client itself. I don't want that business logic to be, exclusive. I want other people to be able to recreate that in other languages and technologies and so on. So instead, I'll use Fane, and Fane, of course, in English is it means to pretend or to act as, right? So if you see an animal in the forest with its head cocked back and one eye open and one eye shut, and its poor little heart is racing to beat the band, then you know that that animal is alive and it's scared. It's pretending to be dead. It's feigning death so that you'll leave it alone. It doesn't want you to bother it on your walk through the forest, right? It's feigning death so that you'll leave it alone, in the same way that WebSphere feigns utility. It's terrified. It just wants you to leave it alone. So we're going to use Fane here to build a declarative client. We're not going to write the code, though. It's an interface, right? It's conventional. So we're going to say that we have an endpoint here that we're going to call read, and read is going to return an array of beer, and we're going to annotate it. We're going to say that we want it to call the beer catalog service, and when it makes that call to the beer catalog service, it should do client-side load balancing and talk to Eureka, and then make a HTTP GET request to the beer's endpoint. And with this annotation in place, we can inject that Fane, that beer client, that Fane-based beer client. So beer client, okay, and we can now use that. So beer client dot read dot filter, right? We need to filter out the poor beers.
Right. The less than great.
Right. Exactly. So we'll use an array of, and what are some less than great ones, my friend?
I would take out Coors Light.
Okay. Like that. Or is it like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then probably PBR.
PBR.
And was there Budweiser in there?
Did we do Budweiser? There it is.
There it is.
Okay.
And I would even say Heineken. Some
Really?
parts of the world are against it, so
Whoa.
let's take out Heineken.
Okay.
I know some people love it.
It's okay. It's
Not a
okay.
fan.
That's not the definitive list. It's just the definitive list in this situation. There we go. So we're now going to remove. Make this a little easier to parse. There we are. We've now removed. We're going to say we want to make sure that the array that we just created does not have, which is the named argument, right? So we're going to say, there we go. And we want actually a list in this case. It doesn't really matter. There we are. There's our list of results. So we can even do a collection. That makes it easier, cheaper, and safer, cleaner. Okay, so it.name, right? There we are. So there's our bit of code. Let's see what happens when we run this. We should get an endpoint here on 8081. Oh, actually, there it is, right there. Good beers. Come on. Hello. So there's our endpoint. Looks like it. 1. We don't have 1 and 2.
Right.
So then 3. No 4 and 5.
It's working.
It's working. Yeah. Simple enough. Now, of course, this is the sunny day path. I think we can agree.
Yeah.
I think the sunny day path is we get the good beers and the service works all the time.
All the time.
Right. But that's not the normal path. We shouldn't assume that, right? If we're going to build a robust system, we need to assume that failure is a distinct possibility. And thankfully, we're already halfway there. We've already done a good enough job, right? We've already got client-side load balancing here. So if we have more than one instance of this service, it's going to do the right thing. It'll degrade gracefully, and we can load balance across different instances. And this is, very common for high-performance organizations. They build production-worthy, robust services. But we've ignored the very real possibility. We've hand-waved away the very real possibility that there are going to be 0 instances of that service when we make that request, right? And that's a bit like load balancing by 0, right? It's not a good not a good result. You don't want to load balance by 0. You don't want to load balance across 0 instances because you'll get a big fat exception in your HTML5, Java stack trace in your HTML5 experience.
It's not going to like a 500.
No way to run a railroad. So we need to understand that you can't load balance by 0. You know what? Load balancing by 0 is a bit like dividing by 0, right? You don't want to load balance. You don't want to load balance or divide by 0. You know what happens if you divide by 0? What is 0 divided by 0?
Imagine that you have 0 cookies and you split them evenly among 0 friends. How many cookies does each person get? See, it doesn't make sense. And Cookie Monster is sad that there are no cookies. And you are sad that you have no friends.
Exactly. Don't make Cookie Monster sad. Assume the worst. Remember that we need to degrade gracefully even if there is a failure. So let's introduce a little bit of slack here, a little bit of failure tolerance in that last case. We want to make sure that our service does the right thing should it fail. So we're going to have a fallback method, fun fallback collection of beer equals array list of, right? So there we go. So there's our fallback method. And we're going to use the Hystrix circuit breaker. We'll say @enable circuit breaker. And down here, we'll specify that when something should happen, we want this fallback method to be called. So fallback method, okay? So what that's going to say is when something should throw an exception. So this client, if it tries to make a call and it throws an exception because there's no instances of the service, then return an empty array list. Right? We're degrading gracefully. We're not throwing a 500 exception. We're not doing anything terrible there. We're just returning an empty array list. High-performing websites do this kind of thing all the time. They'll say, oh, well, you went to the search engine service, but it's not available. So here are some machine-learned recommendations from across the web. It's just a degraded, sort of view of the data. So here we go. Calling the service. That's the sunny day path, happy day. Let's now go to the beer catalog service and take it out of the game for a moment. It's now been re-registered from the registry, and we get the array list, right? The empty list.
Better than a stack trace.
Better than a stack trace, yeah, certainly. Better than a whole number of different things. So we're gonna now restart the service. If you're using a platform like Cloud Foundry, something underneath your platform, underneath your code to sort of babysit your app, your processes, your services, then you have something there that will wear the proverbial pager, right? It'll work all day and all night to make sure that if your application should fall down or if something should go wrong, that it'll get restarted. If you say I want to have 10 instances of this application at all times, then darn it, you're going to have 10 instances of the service at all times, right? You can even auto scale. You can say I want to, based on the overwhelming deluge of traffic, I want to scale up to accommodate that deluge, and Cloud Foundry will happily do that, never once bothering you if it can avoid it. Each time your service falls down, the platform like Cloud Foundry will pick it back up and start it up again, right? The result is that you can sleep easy at night, knowing that the platform is wearing the proverbial pager. But in the meantime, we need to make sure that our code does the right thing, right? The platform's certainly going to do its part. Now it's our job to do our part. So what's happened here is I've introduced a circuit breaker. We made a request to the service. The service gave us back an empty array list. The empty array list came back indicating that the service is down. We then restarted the service, playing the role of a platform, something like Cloud Foundry. It's now going to restart. It's going to re-register itself with Eureka. That's going to have a heartbeat event that goes back out to all the service registry clients, and then it's going to invalidate its local perspective of the registry, and it'll give us eventually a healed view, right? We all know that if a website is poor to respond, slow to respond, the best thing that you can do is to refresh the browser over and over, right?
Oh yeah,
absolutely, right? So of course that doesn't actually work, and the same is true for your distributed system. So the circuit breaker is smart. It sees that we've got enough successive attempts to make a request. It'll actually divert the traffic and route the train tracks to the fallback method all the time, and eventually it'll invalidate that view when it heals itself.
Nice.
And we built a system now that heals itself, right? And we can sleep easy at night knowing that things are fine.
It's awesome.
So there we are. There's a couple of services, some registry, right? I think we're done. I think we nailed it. We can go, right?
Yeah.
Right? We're done. It's all fixed. I mean, there's nothing else to do. I mean,
the record questions to you.
No, there's is it just for me?
Well, about this part of the presentation so far. So
can we do them after this, or do you want to do them now? How many are there?
Actually, just two. So one is from Satish, who is curious in the fact that the good beers logic should be probably in the beers application. Why did you put that into the Edge service as of right now? And probably you could just very quickly answer that.
because we want some sort of view. It's just a derived or materialized view on the data from downstream. It was a simple example. You usually put things at the edge service that are client specific. Arguably, yeah, this could be in the actual service itself, but we wanted a view for a particular application. You know, maybe there's a data set that all clients agree upon, but only some, you know, maybe you have a good beers app or something that doesn't show you all beers, it just shows you the good ones. So you have a client-specific view of it.
Excellent. That's very reasonable, and it's an example app after all. And one question from Mike C. How do you make the protocol HTTPS? And I guess I would add, which from those services would you recommend running on the HTTPS rather than HTTP?
So the edge service should absolutely be HTTPS.
Yep.
And secured, right? We've ignored that for now, right? That's a very real concern. The edge service should be secured and HTTPS. If you have confidence in your edge service and your firewall and your security stack at the edge, then there's not really a whole lot of need to run everything else in HTTPS inside within the service stack. On the other hand, unless you're like Google or some really high scale organization, you probably don't have the scale where you are actively looking to avoid HTTPS, right? Don't use performance as an excuse to avoid security. So I would say keep HTTPS as much as you can, and then err on the side of caution. Keep security as much as you can as well.
Excellent. How do you enable that? Is there a property, or do you need to configure it somehow?
Well, so if you're using Cloud Foundry can terminate SSL for you for services. Obviously, each of these containers, I'm using embedded Tomcat here as well. Tomcat can, Spring Boot has properties for each of your embedded web servers here. So you can say server.ssl. Whatever, right? So all these different values are configurable, and that applies for embedded Jetty, embedded Undertow, and embedded Tomcat. All of them use the same set of properties.
But if you use embedded Undertow, you can also do H2, HTTP2, right?
Well, yeah, all of them support that. All three.
And so, yeah, you can get even more high performance.
Absolutely, and you should do that. I recommend keeping things like security at the platform level, because it's just sort of like something I want to control once instead of per application. But the point is, there's a lot of options here. You don't have to. It's been thought of, right?
Excellent. That's a great answer. Okay, doc. We don't have any questions in the IRC as of right now, so I guess we can switch to Matt's laptop. And
I'd like to think we're done, right? It would make me happy to believe that that's the entire world, and we can get our paycheck and go home.
Right.
But that's not true, is it, Matt?
Right. And I should turn on my mic, and you should turn off yours, right?
Yes, my sound system.
Actually, you could leave it as you were. Actually, that'll be fine as well.
Can you hear me okay?
we hear you. Can you say something else?
You have your sound up?
Yeah. No, it's good. It's good.
Okay, good. So he's connected. All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear both of you. Yeah.
Ah, sweet nectar.
Great. So in Josh's world, he's finished, right?
Yeah, it's done. It's a happy place.
But what about the client? If a tree falls in the wood and there's no client to listen for it, is there really?
No.
And so I think, it's a good idea to develop a client.
Yeah.
So people can see this data and, see it in a pretty way. And one of the things I really like about being a UI developer.
They're not going to use curl?
I'm not going to use curl or HTTP IE, which is another nice tool.
Right.
But, you need to develop a client. So this is an example of a beer client.
Right, yeah.
Right?
Very, very.
But we probably want a cooler one.
That's not a thin client either.
It's not a thin client.
Fat client.
We could develop it with something like JSF.
JSF.
Right? Seems like something from 2004.
Sorry, Matt, interrupt you. Can you try switching the audio back the way it was? I think there is some issue with the sound, at least for me. I'm not sure if the video, YouTube video is also experiencing that. So if you could turn on the sound on Josh's machine, and if Josh could turn off the screen sharing, I think the connection would be happy. Am I online? What's happening? I think I lost everything, everyone.
So we can't hear you at the minute. Josh, are you muted still?
So Matt, I think you muted your machine, but we don't.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
There we go.
Excellent.
Wait. Can you hear that? Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Should I get rid of the audio output on this thing? So
That's fine.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you, and we see Matt's screen.
Okay. Yikes. Right on. So you can hear me over there? Yeah.
Yep.
Good.
Excellent. Sorry for this interruption.
Okay, so moving on.
Mute yours.
Hold on. Yikes.
Hot mic.
I am muted.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I meant, but you want to mute your audio on your laptop too. There you
Then
go.
we can't hear anyone.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Should I turn mine on? Okay, let's try that.
Okay. So, instead of JSF, modern day, use something like maybe React or like Angular, and those typically let you build nice, easy to use web apps, and they scale nicely. And one of the things that you can do is you can actually build really nice applications now. So one of the things that's happened, in the last several years is, in 10 years now, 2007 is when the iPhone first came out. And it was funny, when it first came out, it was actually, no native apps, and all you could use was web apps. And then they quickly realized that they needed more client-side functionality, and they might have realized that, hey, we could profit off this as well. So they created, the App Store and that marketplace and the iOS SDK, and now, there's a lot going on in that space. But at the same time, people have done a lot of work to make it possible so the web apps can actually perform as well as the native apps. So in 2007, Chrome wasn't even released yet, and IE7 had just come out. So that kind of gives you a framework of, wow, this has been a long time since, the iPhone first started. And now what we're dealing with is, really robust and better browsers. And you can actually run a Linux machine in the browser using JavaScript. And this is a quote from Alex Russell. Alex Russell, you might remember, invented Dojo, and then he went on to work at Google, and now he's part of the Google Chrome team, and he also was the initial founder, one of the initial founders of Progressive Web Apps. And so he basically had this talk last year at Chrome Developer Summit, and he said, hey, we failed on mobile. And the reason he says that is because there was a DoubleClick report that came out that basically says 3 seconds on a 3G connection to load a mobile web app is what people expect. And what they found in that same report was that 53% of visits are abandoned if a mobile site takes more than 3 seconds to load. And the same report said the average mobile sites take 19 seconds to load.
Oh,
so that's why we
true.
really failed on mobile, right? It's become just this thing that takes a long time on mobile devices. And the ground truth is these Android devices that are $200 are unlocked and they go on a 3G connection. And the reason this has happened for web developers, for the most part, is because we're developing on laptops, and our laptops are filthy liars because they're really fast, and they can go really fast. And so what he recommends is basically implement a purple pattern. We'll get to what that means in a second. Get that unlocked Android device. Use Chrome's tools to inspect and trace, and also use Lighthouse, which is a Chrome extension that allow you to basically see the performance of your app, see if it's a progressive web app, see how it works, if it works offline, and then use networking and CPU throttling to actually mimic what your users might experience. So the purple pattern means push critical resources for the initial URL route, render the initial route, pre-cache remaining routes, lazy load, and create remaining routes on demand. And this has basically been encapsulated in progressive web apps. And the 3 things that are required for a progressive web app is, first of all, it has to be served over TLS, which is the modern name for HTTPS, load while offline using service workers, and then it references a web app manifest. And the web app manifest basically says, here's the icons for the app, and here's what someone might need to install the app. So progressive web apps allow you to install the app either on your machine or on your phone. And the one big problem with them is they aren't supported on iOS. But just last week, basically Apple started moving on adding support for it in iOS or on Safari, which is both on the desktop and on the phone. So that's great in the sense of, you can start developing this way and using progressive web apps in your app. And so the cool thing about progressive web apps and these features, you don't actually need to implement them in any specific framework. They can, be a time leaf application that's server side. They can be a JavaScript application with, Angular or React. Doesn't really matter. So let's look at some code to do that. I'm going to develop an app that basically talks to Josh's backend, and it uses Angular and it loads while offline. So let's get to that. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a client, but I also have this project, which we'll give you a link to at the end, that I'll start up. It's called Cloud Native PWAs. It's on GitHub. Looks like I might have changed some stuff, so we'll make sure we're on a fresh branch there and delete this class. Okay, so now we can get started and go into, first of all, the beer catalog service. And we'll start that up with Gradle. Then we'll go into our Eureka service. Start that up with Maven.
Oh, I can hear it.
You can hear it churning. So Josh and I have been doing some testing with, Mac versus Linux, because he runs a Linux box now. And what we found is his laptop is a filthy liar for Java developers. But the difference is Java runs on the server side, right? And you're not compiling it and loading it. So he actually, his ability to run like Maven, Spring Boot start and all that is twice as fast as mine. And even NPM install happens twice as fast. And this is a fairly new laptop, only about a year old. And his is what, 6 months old or something like that.
6 months old.
So if you're doing Java development, we highly recommend Linux.
Yeah, Linux.
Right?
Hey,
A
Matt.
lot faster. Yeah.
Did you know that in Argentina, political parties have their own brands of beer?
Wow, that's awesome.
That is.
I'd hate to see what our brands of beer would be here.
Oh, I wonder if that would translate into more peace or less.
I don't know. So we'll start that up. We'll make sure we get the beers going. Let's see, it's 8081. Good beers.
Now we're cooking. Or not.
Still working.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
Did you know there's a beer brewed from bananas in Africa?
That sounds good.
That does sound good. Breakfast beer.
Right. So, we only have those beer names.
Oh, we gotta do
a poll.
Yeah.
Right.
Should be in the Git repository.
You didn't deploy it?
You want to just
I
copy
thought
it?
you did last night.
I thought I did too. Go to the code.
On GitHub?
Yeah. Should. Certainly hope so.
Matt, while this is loading, just wanted to ask if when you're gonna show the command line, I guess, can you please make the font bigger? I think somebody on the YouTube complained that it might not be very visible. I guess they should increase the quality of the video stream using the YouTube cog icon, but just in case. Thank you.
All we got is ABC.
I'm gonna push everything here. Okay. CD. Command A.
Okay, while Josh is doing that, I can start creating the Angular client. So Angular CLI is an application that you can use to create an Angular client. So you do npm install -g Angular CLI to make that happen. I already have it installed, so I can do ng -- version. And you can see I'm using the latest version, 127. I'm using Node 6.11 because that's the latest long-term release of Node. So you could use 8 if you want, but I didn't for this one. And you can do ng new, and we'll just call it client. I already did that, so delete that one. Start a new one. And what this does, you'll see it creates a number of files. So it starts with an editor config, a README, and some app components, module, and then some environment files, a favicon, the good old index.html, and the main entry point that Angular requires, some polyfills for older browsers, a style sheet, and some things to compile TypeScript, as well as an Angular CLI JSON and a bunch of tests. So these are for end-to-end tests, and then these files here are for unit tests. And there's also the good old package.json. So let's see if Josh made that change. So now we have that one in there. We can git pull and rerun this. So you can see it took about 52 seconds to generate an app, and that's because it ran npm install or yarn, which is Facebook's equivalent of npm. It does a little bit better job of caching the results locally. There is npm 5 that's out now that comes with Node 8, and that does similar things. And I've seen that Node or npm 5 is actually faster than yarn. In some instances on the JHipster project, we've seen it be equivalent speed. So you can use npm 5 or yarn. Highly recommend both of those over npm 3. So now that we have that, we should be able to see a list of the beers that Josh entered. Oh, we're still not. Maybe I need to refresh this one too.
Did you get pull?
I did.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
Did you know that in 1963, Albert Heineken created a beer bottle that could also be used as a brick to build sustainable housing in impoverished countries?
That's a good idea.
I wonder if it actually works. I mean,
right. So maybe we should put Heineken back in the list because.
But it's a glass brick. Doesn't seem
really thick, maybe.
I don't know.
You don't believe it?
I don't know. It seems weird. Whatever.
Well, we also have 80/80 beers, right?
There we are.
So they're in there.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
Actually, hey, audience. Did you know? I'm sure Matt knows this. Did you know that in France, Germany, Austria, Spain, and the Netherlands, they serve beer at McDonald's? And some in wine.
Really?
Yeah.
Wonder if they're on the dollar menu.
I don't know.
They might. They probably don't have the dollar menu, right? It's a US thing.
Euro thing. The Euro menu or something.
The Euro menu. Okay, so I'm going to open this up in IntelliJ. The reason I like IntelliJ is mostly for UI development now. It's got great support for CSS, for Sass, for JavaScript, for TypeScript, and I don't believe the Eclipse is quite caught up. But you know, if you're looking for a good web development tool, I highly recommend IntelliJ IDEA or WebStorm. Those are both really popular in the space. So we can start creating stuff from the command line here. And we can basically say ng create service, or actually generate. So you can type out generate if you want. You can type out service if you want, but you can also do ng-gs. And you can say we want a beer service. And what this will do is it'll create two classes you see there. So we can make directory for those. I don't like those to be in the main app directory, so I do source app shared beer, and then move those into there. And then IntelliJ does take a little while to index. That's my only complaint. But once it does, it's you know, off to the races, and it's very easy and fun to use. So in shared here, we have this beer service, and we can basically, the first thing we're going to need is a dependency on HTTP. And HTTP is provided by Angular. So once you have that, you can create a method, something like getAll, and it'll return an observable. We'll just say of type any. And then there's shortcuts that you can get for Angular 2 that allow you to do things like HTTP, and it uses live templates to basically spit out that boilerplate code for you. So you can do localhost 8081 and then good beers. And you'll notice IntelliJ is like, hey, there's a problem here with that map, but it's not smart enough to actually import anything. So I create a shortcut for that myself, which does that import of the RxJS operator map. The reason you don't want to import all of the RxJS stuff is because with AOT and ahead of time compiling, a lot of that will end up in your app. And if you're not using it, well, then you're adding a lot of extra code. And you'll notice here IntelliJ gives a very nice and easy to read message that says the type argument for the type parameter t cannot be inferred from the usage. And so once you do this a few times, you'll know that what they really mean to say is, hey, you need to import response. And then compile TypeScript to JavaScript. I don't do that, because if you do choose to do that, what IntelliJ will do is it will create a .js file right next to your TS file, and it'll hide it. We use Webpack with Angular to actually build the TypeScript code and convert that to JavaScript, so you don't need it when you're using Angular CLI. So now we have the beer service, and the first thing you're going to need to do is register that beer service as a provider in the main module. And then we'll also create a new service or a new component to render the beer, and we'll call it ng generate component, and we'll call it beer list. And so what happens is this beer list is created. You can see that it has a selector of app beer list, and so we can go into our app component and say, hey, we want to show this. And then in the app component itself, we'll make this a little smarter and say, hey, this is our beer list. And in here, we're going to have div. And again, a shortcut is ng4. And you can say, let b of beers. And then you can just show the beer name. So that works, but you'll notice IntelliJ is like, hey, in that beer list component, there's no beers variable. So we have to go and create that. We'll say beers. And we'll say it's an array of any. And then we'll inject that service, beer service. Okay. And now in our on init, we'll go ahead and load that up. So this beer service, get all, and then we'll subscribe to that observable. We'll say with that data, go ahead and set it to the local variable. This beers equals data. So now we should have everything we need to actually render that data. So let's go ahead and start it. It starts on localhost 4200 by default. That's just what Angular CLI uses. The good news is now compiling JavaScript takes longer than Java, so you've got more time in your day to goof off. Or I mean, go sword fighting in the hallway. So we have welcome to, and you notice what's wrong. Who knows? Let's look in our console, and our console basically says that there's no provider for HTTP. So after a while, you start to understand what this means. When you first start with Angular, it might be kind of confusing, but I'm sure if you Google this, it would show up right on Stack Overflow, usually the lead developer on the teams I work on. So no provider for HTTP. You can go into the app module here and say import the HTTP module, and then it will refresh your browser for you, and it gives a new error. So now we're seeing our beer list component. At least we see the title for that, we see the welcome to the app at the top, and it says it cannot load 8081 good beers because of cross-origination resource requests. So we need to go into our project here, Edge service, open that up in IntelliJ, and give the ability for that server to actually, serve up cross-origin requests. So there's the Edge service application. And in here, you can use a Spring annotation called cross-origin.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, what?
Did you know until the 1970s in Belgium, table beer was served in school refectories?
Like teachers could go and have a beer?
I think so.
Huh. Interesting. I did not know that. So on this one, you'll do origins, and because it's Kotlin, you have to do arrays of, or array of, I believe. And then, just like I said not to do, it's /start. But you could also do, of course, localhost 4200. Problem with doing that is you would have to actually change it, before you went to production. So that's why I'm just doing star to simplify things here, and we're not too concerned, at least right now. So with that, we can restart this application. And now we should be able to talk to it.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
Did you know that there's a brewery in Germany that's almost 1,000 years old? It's been in continuous operation since the year 1040.
Whoa.
I think that's a field trip we should do.
Right.
In about 20
Because they
years.
have Volkswagen factories and stuff in Germany as well.
Exactly.
So now let's try our app again. And there we are. We got our list of beers. But a list of beers is kind of boring. So let's spice that up a bit. Let's go back into here. And we're going to create a new service called Giphy Service. So we'll show an animated GIF for each beer name. And that should be scary or humorous.
Right. Or both.
Or both.
Unpredictable either way.
Right. Not a new package. I need a new directory. Just call it Giphy. And then a Giphy service.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
Did you know that cynosilicophobia is the fear of an empty beer glass?
That's something that people really have, huh?
That's a thing, yeah.
Wow.
It wasn't just you.
Right. So our Giphy service talks to the Giphy API. This API key is something on their GitHub repository that they say, go ahead and use it only for demos. Since we're doing a demo, it's great. If you want to go to production, don't use it, buy one, pay them some money. So what we do here is we talk to the Giphy API with a search term, and then we get the results from that, and we map that into JSON. And then since it returns a number of results, we just grab the first one. And then if there isn't any results, we go ahead and serve up a 404, which is always fun because dancing cats are cool.
Word.
Right? It's kind of fun to just watch them. Okay, so back to our template now. We actually need to, first of all, add our Giphy service. So Giphy service. And then we basically loop through each beer and go and grab the name of that and subscribe to the results, and then add Giphy URL as a property. Then we can go in here and say br image source. And it's important to, of course, add an alt tag so screen readers can read it as well. Of course, there's more than just this, but good practice. And this isn't going to work because we haven't added the Giphy service as a provider. So now if we go back, now we're getting, so Kronberg isn't found.
Awkward.
Awkward.
It's a cool cat, though.
Right, but Sapporo. Oh, without Tsingtao. Rochefort. It's like fighting Star Lager. So no bad ones yet. Maybe we shouldn't keep scrolling.
Yeah, I'm okay if we just.
All right, so that looks pretty good so far. But we still, have a wide open system. So one of the things I want to do is I want to actually lock it down a little more. So back to our Edge service, we can do that with Okta. Okta, is a cloud authorization API for you to basically keep your users in the cloud and keep them secure there. So we have a couple tools to make it easy to basically lock down your system. So we're going to import a bomb. Now you see it says Stormpath here. Now I used to work for Stormpath, now I work for Okta. The reason that happens is because basically we joined forces with Okta and we've updated our SDKs to talk to the Okta API. So you can use the Stormpath SDKs to do that. We will very soon, probably in the next week or two, have Okta SDKs that work the same way as far as what I'm showing here. There is a more advanced system where we actually do token or JWT validation between microservices. And so if you go to the Okta blog, I'll have some links at the end. We show you how to do that. This is just going to use the regular Spring Boot starter in front of the Edge service. And so it's not doing any security between the Edge service and the beer catalog service. But you can also do that, and it all is based on Spring security. So you'll notice at the top here, it says this file is indented with tabs instead of 4 spaces. So the Spring team is one of the few that still likes tabs over spaces. But I've noticed that more people make more money with spaces, right? You've seen that study, so I'm going to go ahead and try to increase my salary. So now we have this boot starter that we can use. And so we save that, and then we go and restart our application. And the one thing we are going to need to change is, so instead of doing that cross origin, not the get mapping, but the cross origin, it's a different property now. So because we're using storm path, you have to add storm path, web, cores, and then allowed origins, and we can say star again. Or we could be a little more secure and say localhost 4200. And then of course you could get another one if you wanted for your production URL. So we'll start this guy up again. And now what'll happen is if we try to talk to the actual API, it's not going to work because it's going to give us a 401. The nice thing is the Spring Boot starter also gives you the ability to actually log in to the API. So once it starts up, I can go to localhost 8081 or 8081. Come on, baby. And so this is actually talking to the Okta API. I've already set up Okta, and I've set up some local variables to make all this work. But you'll see there that it actually, prompts me to log in. It's also got the ability to resend a verification email, forgot password, and even create an account. So I can use a pre-canned account that I have.
And you can skin that sign-in form and all that?
Yeah, you can change all that with custom templates. It uses Timeleaf, so it's easy to just drop in a new Timeleaf template. So that's showing the server, but we have the client, right? That's not going to be able to talk to the server. If we go back to the client, localhost 4200, it's not going to work now because, 401. So to make that work, you can use a sign-in widget that we have. Terminal here, you do yarn add Okta sign-in widget, which is open source, so you can improve it, use it, customize it however you like. And then basically I'm going to write some code that integrates the sign-in widget. And one of the things I do need to warn you about is it's a little more code than you might expect. We will be wrapping that up into an Okta Angular library that takes a lot of the pain out of this, and it should only be a couple lines of code in the end.
It's code that you'd have to write no matter which stack you're using, but they're going to make it simpler for you.
Right. Yep. So we'll create a new directory name called Okta.
It's a shame this kind of stuff isn't baked into Angular.
Right. But there are libraries out there that do this, and this is one of them. It's kind of early, so we're making it better every day. So we'll create Okta service.ts, and we'll add that to Git. We'll call this Okta service, and then so this is basically the configuration for the sign-in widget. This is my developer instance here, my client ID for an OpenID Connect client, and then I have a couple observables to actually listen when the user is authenticated. You'll see here's the rendering of the sign-in widget, and then it gets the success, and then it saves the ID token and the access token, and then hides the sign-in widget after they've successfully logged in. There's also this to convert a ID token to a user, so I can display like username on the screen. So now once that is created, I can go and add it as a provider, and then I'm going to go into our app component and do some work to actually change this. So it shows the login. So there's a sign-in container. And then this is using some old stuff that I'll take out. There we go. So now basically if there's a user, then it shows and says welcome user. If there's not, then it goes ahead and shows something else. So now if we go into app component TS, we basically add the logic to use the Okta auth service, and it basically says, hey, if they're authenticated, then convert that ID token to a user. If they're not, then show the login screen, and then also listen if there's new authentication for when they log out and stuff like that. And then there's also some CSS we're going to want. So the widget actually looks good. And then we should be pretty much good to go. And there you go. Now we're getting an actual sign-in widget. So we can go here and we can say, hey, use that same credentials. And it signs into our app. And I don't know why the beer list didn't load that time. Oh, it's because our beer service isn't really aware of that, right? So we're not passing any authorization or authentication headers in here. So this is Okta headers is my shortcut. And what you see here is basically setting an authorization header from the access token using OAuth. And that's only if the user is actually authenticated. And then you'll see this and you'll be like, what? Another weird kind of error. The reason that happens is you need to import headers. And that fixes that problem. As it's recompiling, we should actually get the list of beers. Come on, baby. Maybe we'll try logging out and logging back in.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
Did you know that Norway's first aircraft hijacking was solved after the hijacker surrendered his weapon in exchange for more beer?
Really?
I'm not sure if that's true. It sounds awesome. Oh, internet.
Oh, internet. So we'll look at our request, make sure our authorization header is getting set. Nope. Okay. We'll back it out now. It was close. It worked yesterday. So we'll take these guys out. Oh, here it is.
Did you get diff?
No, I didn't put the options, right? You got to
Okay.
pass it in there. It's not going to know about it if you don't put it in there.
No.
There we
There we
are.
are.
Now we got everything. Boy, so close to failing,
Ah,
right? It was suspenseful.
failure tolerant.
So now
Building for failure.
we need to
Failing
convert this to a PWA, right? So the boring security stuff is over. Now, to make it into a PWA, there's a couple things you'll need. First of all, I want to pretty it up a little. I'm going to use Angular material. Get rid of that guy. Oh, he put it in there. Yarn add Angular material. Also, Angular CDK is a new peer dependency that stands for Component Development Kit, and also Angular app shell. This allows us to have a shell of our app that just loads even when we're offline. And then there's a new thing in the latest release of Angular material where instead of importing a material module, you have to import each individual basically component. So I'm going to create a module for that. We'll kind of call app material module.ts. Don't ask me again. And in here, we're going to do ng. And basically, this just imports and exports the modules we want to use. So you just modify this file instead of having to individually import them into your main app module. So app material module, we'll import that. And then for app shell, there's also this app shell module. And it's got two different ones. We're going to use the runtime one. And then we'll need to import that. Oh. And sometimes IntelliJ gets wonky with that. So you have to go here and do I know that exists. You got to type from right. And now it actually works. So it doesn't always resolve all the imports, but once you know why, it's pretty easy after that. So and then there's some styles. So material styles. So these are for Angular, and then also those Okta ones. Put those in there. So, and then I'm going to give my sign-in widget a little just top margin. Okay, or margin top. Sometimes I'm good at CSS. And after that, we can actually convert some of these components to using material. So this is you can use the toolbar and progress bar, and this is those shell no render and shell render. And then we also wanted our login stuff. So we have that back in there. And we'll also pretty up our beer list a bit. So we use MD list, and then we also have this avatar for that. And at this point, we should be able to see a little prettier list, right? Our logout button doesn't look great, but we can go and modify that. Or was it back here? MD erase button. Oh, not so worried about that guy. But in our application or in our network, you can see here if we actually do offline, is it resilient? Is it robust? No.
Not so much.
Doesn't work offline. So to make it work offline, you can add service worker support. And this is new in Angular CLI, where basically you can do, first of all, you'll add service worker library. So -D is for save dev with NPM. And it basically works like Angular service worker is the name of it, the dependency. And then you can do ng set, and then you do apps.0.serviceworker equals true. So ng set apps.0.serviceworker equals true. What that does is this Angular CLI file ends up with that service worker equals true. And then smartly, what happens is you'll notice if we go back to our app, and even if we toggle offline, Chrome has the ability to look at service workers. So you can go into the application and say, hey, are there any service workers? And there aren't any. The reason for that is what they do is they only have service workers enabled on production. So you can do ng build -prod. And that's actually a great thing in my opinion, because as a developer, you're always frustrated with anything getting cached in your browser, right? You want to see the latest sort of thing. So in development, you really don't want to work with service workers that much because you're trying to get the latest and greatest code. So it only pertains to development, which I think is a great idea, or production. And so after we build that, even though we're still running on 4200, we can start up another server in the dist directory where everything gets created.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
Did you know that President Jimmy Carter signed a bill that created an exemption from taxation of beer brewed at home for personal or family use, and that opened the door for today's craft beer breweries?
Nice.
Yeah.
Good on him, right?
Yeah. We're working for the people.
So I have an alias that I call web that starts with a Python server on port 8000. So once that's up and running, now I can go here and we'll see that same client optimized for production. So I can log in. If I can type my password.
You can do it.
Come on. Oh well. But either way, we can go to network and we can say offline. Then that doesn't work at all. Okay, try it again. But we can see there's a service worker, right? So you can see that worker basics right there. There's no manifest. Come on. Let's look at the console when it does it. Oh yeah. So we have to go into Okta and we have to say, hey Okta, you're allowed to, hear from port 8000 instead of just 4200. So this is a configuration here. Since I'm logged in as that guy, I got to log in as the administrator, which is me. I use 1Password. I highly recommend it. I don't know any of my passwords, to be honest. Do you, Josh? Use 1Password?
I used to use 1Password when I was on a Mac, and I use LastPass now on Linux. But either way, same
deal, right?
Result.
And then so I log in here. I go into API settings, security API, and I have to add localhost 8000. So add the origin. Let's call it. I just like to name it the same as what I'm setting. So localhost 8000. And allow cores. Now we can basically go back here, try again. Never. Oh, it wants it as a redirect as well. Fine. Download at okta.com. Not going to tell you my password. Oh yeah, there's another thing. So we're working on making this stuff better, but I have this Angular PWA right here, and you basically have to set it up. So we're secure by default, right? We don't want to just allow any sort of random, URL. So login, redirect URLs, we have to add the 8000 one. So once we've added that, now it's going to work. Refresh. So hard to go to production.
Hey.
There it is. So it's coming up. Oh, and now our service, right? I should have stuck with star right on the service stuff.
Yeah.
Boy, all this cores and security can really make it difficult. But hey, we're locked down, baby. So we had that one. We go back, restart. Hopefully people are still awake.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean,
a lot of clicking and stuff.
just to recap, if we're all on the same page, so far we built a production-worthy application. We've scaled it out. We've introduced client-side load balancing and security. We've introduced graceful degradation to the service itself. We built an Angular application. We built a layer of security into it. We made it a progressive web application.
Right.
We have the demo. You have to see the dismount, to stick the dismount, but we're so close.
Right.
Yeah.
We're like 5 minutes away.
That's been, well,
Look at that. Now that's all working, right? And if we go into network and we say, hey, offline, baby, and we try it again. Oh, so close. Why? Service worker didn't like it.
Oh, service worker.
Well, this is when you go, hey, I already loaded that, and it should load again. So you just try again, right? That's what we do as web developers. We try when you're online.
Okay.
And then we try when you're offline. Oh, totally failed. Well, I'll go on to the next step. The next step is there's a real, you need a manifest. So realfaveicongenerator.net is a way of generating a manifest file that has all your icons. So I'm going to select a favorite icon picture, which I pre-downloaded for a beer icon. And so this generates the manifest file and a bunch of icons for you. And we can tweak them here. You can see that icon right there. We'll make that into a white one. And then we'll go ahead and leave that one. And then for Windows, we'll go ahead and use a white one as well. And then we're going to put that in assets icons. So generate that. And it's going to give us a bunch of HTML that we can put in our head for all the icons. All right, so we'll copy that. Go back to IntelliJ, the right one. Not the index one, this one. So we'll put all those in there. And you'll notice there's the manifest.json. And then we need to download the favicon package.
Hey,
So we'll open that up.
hey, Matt.
Yeah.
Did you know that when scientist Niels Bohr won the Nobel Prize in 1922, the Carlsberg Brewery gave him a perpetual supply of beer piped into his house?
Whoa.
Go science.
Right. He was a happy man. So in the icons directory, now we can put everything in there. And this manifest is what we'll want to modify. So we'll say like PWA beers, and it needs a short name as well. So short name. And down here, it needs a start URL. And I have that all in a shortcut. So that's what that looks like. And then that's linked from our main page. And so if we're building our app again, since we need service workers, we do have to do a production build each time we want to test it. Hey, Josh.
Yes, sir.
Did you know beer was not considered an alcoholic beverage in Russia until 2013?
I didn't know that.
It's nuts, right?
It's crazy.
But they do have voda and vodka, right? Very similar. One's water, one's vodka. So maybe that explains it. I spent, a whole 10 years studying Russian.
Yeah.
And I didn't really keep up on it, but I wish I had.
But remember those words.
Yeah.
Important.
Remember voda and vodka. But there is no word for ice.
Really?
At least when I was there. Or I couldn't figure it out. Couldn't find cold ice for the life of us. Ice is usually cold, right?
Well, one hopes.
Okay, so we're probably still offline here. So we'll go back here to our network. Oh, it's not offline. What happened? Just took a little while.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're getting everything loaded up. But we can also look here and see that we have a manifest now, right? And so it's got everything in there. It's got our icons. And we can actually, if we click a couple flags and enable, add to shelf, and enable bypass user checks and relaunch Chrome, then Chrome will actually prompt us to install these apps. So someday these might actually be, you know, defaults that are automatically there, and people can just use them. But you'll notice now at the top of the screen here, we have add this site to your shelf to use it at any time. So what you can do.
So Matt,
and then you can add it as an app.
Matt, the biggest problem of restarting Chrome is that Hangouts is a Chrome tab.
So it killed everything?
It killed Hangouts, but luckily we can still hear you through Josh's.
Oh dear.
All right, but now I can join again.
Yeah, there we go, bang.
There we go.
There we go.
Restarting Chrome.
Restarting Chrome.
Well, they didn't. They should have built a more progressive web app for Hangouts.
Right.
Seriously, can't you just survive, you know, catastrophic failure?
That, and it could be like an actual, you know, in doesn't have to be in Chrome. It could be in Electron or something, right? Yeah. So once you have that running, then you can actually use this tool called Lighthouse to actually generate a report around the app and say, hey, how robust is it, right? Can it really be? I think so. Can you see my screen? I'm screen sharing. It says I am.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay.
So it does take a little while to run, but it's a pretty cool app. Unfortunately, because we've added, you know, login, it's just going to load up the login screen and not actually test much else. But I highly recommend it. And what Josh and I did is we actually, in this directory here, so cloud native PWAs, we created this build file. So vi build that deploys everything to Cloud Foundry. So it copies some application cloud properties in there, and then it basically builds both the Maven and Gradle. And then based on this manifest that Josh created, it actually goes and deploys everything to Cloud Foundry using CF push. It also deploys the client and changes the URL in that beer service to point to the new backend.
So if you look at the manifest.yaml.
Ooh, I was able to quit VI.
Yeah. There you go. So that declaratively describes the entire structure of our system today, right? We have a Eureka service, a catalog, the edge service, and the client. And that's it. That's the, you know, basically, in order for that to work, you need to actually compile and build all the stuff, which is what most of that build.sh does. The rest of it is just CF push, right? You have to build the images that are used for this.
All right, so we get a Lighthouse report here. We only get 64, but you can see it's because we didn't have anything in there that said, hey, you know, no JavaScript is installed. We did good on accessibility and best practices. We're not redirecting to HTTPS. It doesn't like that, you know, it's not fast enough. Some things are slow. Giphy is slow. We also are taking those really big images and compressing them down to really small icons. So those are just some of the things there. Also, we deployed this, right? What's it called? PWA Angular?
Yeah, PWA Angular client, whatever. Is that right? That's cfapps.io. Hey.
So this one is running in production. We didn't put security on this one because obviously not everyone has an account to my system. So this one you could also run a Lighthouse report on, and it does use HTTPS, so it might be a bit better. So that's the majority of our presentation. So you can see here that building progressive web apps can be
very hard.
A little difficult. I had to write a lot of code right on the client, but that's because we don't have a JVM where you can hide everything in jars on the server.
I wanna really emphasize that point. You wrote a lot more code than I did today.
Right.
Do you remember in the days when the client side was for the script kiddies and the back end was for the serious engineers?
Right.
And I just want to say you're my hero for wading through all that action.
Well,
you know,
Spring is my hero for actually making it so we only have to write 10 or 20 lines of code, right?
Oh,
to do CRUD. So
incredible.
That's really nice. The cool thing is that JHipster is actually a project out there that'll generate a lot of this stuff for you. It'll both do a microservices architecture as well as just a monolith. and generates Angular code for you as well. So if you're interested, check it out.
And it's based on Spring Boot.
Yep.
So you'll get that as well.
It's basically using all the technologies that we use today. You can learn more both on Spring.io guides. They have a ton of good information on there. Even if you're just beginning with Java, I highly recommend you go look at that because it's a great resource for learning Spring and Java. And then on the Okta blog, I have all these posts that I've written in the last couple of months that tell you how to build a PWA, has the ultimate guide to PWAs, building microservices architecture for microbrews, which is basically everything that Josh did. I just took all his code, put it into a blog post. So thanks for that, Josh.
Thank you, buddy.
And then I posted one yesterday on how to do the microservices architecture with Spring Security JWTs and Juicer, a new library that converts like a JWT into a Spring Security user object. So all that's pretty cool. And here's the GitHub URL. And
in case you didn't catch everything that we typed.
Right,
today.
right. So
But
everything that we have is out there and available for use. The security stuff that I did with Okta is in an Okta branch, so that's not on the master branch. So if you're interested in that, check it out.
Not bad, my friend. We're happy to take questions now. I can't imagine they're all
that was excellent. You are both my heroes.
Thanks for having us.
Hearing some echo.
Oh,
Maybe just me. Hopefully it's not that just me. But yeah, that was great. That was amazing amount of code that you, Matt, managed to produce in this short time, and that was also an amazing amount of code that you, Josh, managed to kind of import and hide in the charts and annotations.
yeah.
We have one.
The code. It's the best kind of code is code I don't write.
Yeah, you just slap 700 annotations and it all works. We have a question about the Okta, Okta for you, Matt. So AJ is asking, how do you deploy this whole Okta thing to Cloud Foundry? Do you deploy an Okta tile as a prerequisite, or do you integrate through the Cloud Foundry SSO tile?
So what you'll do is actually within the Spring Boot app, it reads a couple of environment variables that I have set. So I can show you what those look like right now.
So is there an Okta service on Cloud Foundry? I don't think.
No, but I mean, I should write one, right?
Yeah,
like
totally.
This is a good idea for collaboration between Josh and I. But
Yeah.
if I look at my bash RC and search for, we still have some storm path naming stuff in there. But you'll see here, I have a few different. I have a client base URL, an application ID, and application token. So if I wanted to deploy this to Cloud Foundry, all I would have to do as part of my deploy script, take those environment variables and set them on Cloud Foundry.
So Okta is a software as a service. It's hosted. There's no on-premise version of it.
Right.
Which makes sense. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Cloud only, baby. Okta means a unit of cloud measurement.
Yeah, which is kind of awesome.
So, but I do agree that it would be sweet if you could just go into Cloud Foundry and say, hey, add Okta.
Yeah.
And at Stormpath, we did have that for Heroku. And so I like both Heroku and Cloud Foundry. So I will personally try in the next several months to make that happen.
Service brokers.
Yeah, baby.
Fun.
Excellent. I think it is time to wrap up. I would like to thank you both for an amazing, amazing session. I learned personally a lot of great things, and I think I will be looking into Angular progressive web apps sometimes in the future. So it was great. This session will be available on YouTube as soon as we stop broadcast. Well, the video is already there. So if anyone who is watching or anyone who is watching later and you have any questions to Matt or Josh, you can find them on Twitter, and I bet they will be happy to chat with you. You can find Matt at Raible, and Josh is at Starbucksman with an X. So I think that is it. Thanks again.
Actually, Oleg, just one more thing. Hey, Oleg, did you know that the world's biggest red wine consumers are the Chinese? But the Vatican, with 74 liters per capita, drink the most wine per capita. Just a little wine fact. I didn't want to leave non-wine drinkers, also wine drinkers, out of this. I thought it was heavily too beer focused. So I would have put that out there.
Nice.
That's an amazing fact, Simon. Thank you so much, Simon, as well, for providing help, supporting, and hosting this session. And that is it. It was great fun. See you all online. Thanks again, guys. It was excellent.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers.